And all right, so let's share screen. And audio's going. And I will join this one. And all right, so lesson 1, bubble 1, just follow along.
My name is Brendan Reville. I'm from Australia and I learned to program when I was 10 years old. Since then, I've worked on the Xbox.
And now here at code.org, I've helped build some of the Hour of Code tutorials that I know a lot of people have enjoyed. Whether you're planning out your day, brainstorming ideas for a project, or choosing songs for a party, you'll probably want to make a list. Lists help us stay organized by ordering all the relevant pieces of information, one after the other, in a single place. The same principle applies when we write programs that include many pieces of related information. Variables are useful for holding a single piece of information, but as we collect more information, keeping the variables organized can be complicated and cumbersome. For example, what if you wanted to keep track of everybody's name in class or an entire school? It's impractical to create hundreds or thousands of individual variables, and impossible if you don't know how many items should be tracked ahead of time. In programming, a list is a container used to keep similar pieces of data organized in one place. You can think of it like a container that grows or shrinks to fit the number of items it has inside. The main items you can do to a list are add or replace items, access items, and remove items. In JavaScript, a list is called an array. You may hear list or array used interchangeably, but we'll refer to it as a list to keep it simple. A basic example of a list would be all your contacts, on your phone, in your email, etc. Let's see how this would work. To start off, you need to create a list. You do this by using square brackets. An empty list looks like this. You can also create a list with some initial values in it. Just write out the values, separated by commas, inside the square brackets. For example, you could make a list of numbers like this, or a list of names, as in a contact list, like this. Just like how you can assign a number or a string to a variable, like var x gets 5, you can also assign a list to a variable to use it later, like this. You can think of a list as a container of numbered slots. Each slot can have one value in it.
All right, so you may have noticed something there with the how the slots are numbered. I'm pretty sure he mentions it in this episode, but we will break it down. It's super critical.
To access an individual item from your list, write out the name of the list and the number of the slot you want to access, like this. This means, give me the item in the list names, sitting in slot number 2. The official term for slot number is index, so we would read names, left bracket, 2, right bracket, as names at index 2. You might have noticed that the first index in the list is 0. In programming, we usually start counting at 0, which means that names at index 0 is the first item of the list, and names at index 2 is actually the third item in the list.
All right, so those of you who have trouble not looking at your phones during class or not doing work for other courses, stop. This is like the critical fact for the next 3 years. No, for the next couple weeks, for as long as you're using this class. Okay, so our analogy, my analogy for a variable is a shoebox. You can put anything in that shoebox. You can put a number, you can put a string, you know, a word in quotes. You could put a Boolean, like a true false, the concept of a true false. You can also put an array into that shoebox. Okay, an array is just our list, but the key is that it's a numbered list. So you can think of that shoebox as having little different subcontainers or different you know, slots or whatever. Each of those positions has a number. The first position is number 0. Now, the original reason for this was because early computers had severely limited memory. And if you're trying to maximize the memory of a very limited, chip or hardware, you can use 0 as a position in the list. Okay, the smallest number you can make with any number of bits is 0. That's a whole position, so it makes sense in that case to have position 0. Now I think it's more of a like computer sciences want to like exclude people that don't understand and like seem super cool when they start counting from 0. But it just is the first item of the list is index 0. However, while that is a trap, a confusion that will come up several times, in pseudocode, which is the way that coding questions will show up on the AP exam, they start from item 1. I don't know why. I'm almost positive every or nearly every actual programming language starts counting from 0. But anything in pseudocode, there'll be an explanation to remind you that the first one is 1. Regardless, for us in AppLab and in JavaScript, the first item is item 0. That means that the last item is however many items there are minus 1. More on that in a second. Now, another analogy, because one of them will probably stick. An array is like a street full of houses. The name of the array is the name of the street. The index is the address, and the house is the name of that street at that address. So if you say the name of the street and then in square brackets the address, you're actually referring to the house or whatever's in that index, whatever's in that slot. I know I wouldn't say that's a lot, but it is something that all of that you need to understand in order to move forward.
When your program runs, the computer will look up the current value that lives at the given index of the list, just like the computer looks up the current value of a variable. For example, if you have a list of numbers called numList, you can create an expression like this. var sum gets numList at index 2 plus numList at index 5.
When you name the street and the address, you're referring to what is at that address on that street. Index 2 is the third thing. Okay. And well, of this list. So this expression, numList index 2, is actually just referring to the number 40. This isn't changing what's at this position, what's at this address, what's at this index. It's just referencing it. Okay, so it's creating a new variable with whatever is at numList index 2, which in this case is 40, plus whatever's at numList index 5, which is 60, and he's going to show you how that is.
The value stored in index 2 is 40, and the value stored at index 5 is 60, so the variable sum is assigned the value 100.
Okay, so like I said, this isn't changing the value. It's creating a new variable called sum and it's referring to two numbers. That's just a basic situation. There is a check for understanding, which we'll just do together. And so I don't even know how to reset it without. Can I reset this? All right, well, there are the answers. You don't have to do it. I'm not checking this. But it's just asking which number is at index 4. Index 4 is the 5th item in the list. Okay, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's fine. All right, you can go ahead and turn on your computers now and go to lesson 2, index 1. Lesson 2, bubble 1. Actually, check that. If you were not in 4th period, you need to go to the My Dashboard, Your My Dashboard. Okay, just keep backing and clicking and whatever. Go all the way down to Find a Course. Or join a section, excuse me, join a section. And the section code for period 4 is D, B, H, V, T, J. This is the section code. This one right here. You need to join that section if you were not in 4th period last semester. You don't need to remove yourself. Actually, I'm not even positive you can remove yourself from the other one, but I'll go through and figure out who needs to be dropped. You'll still be able to access the old stuff, I believe. Almost positive. Because it's a continuation of the same course. And it's also your account, but I'll just drop it from, if you move wherever you're duplicated, I'll remove the other one. Is anybody having trouble joining 4th period? It's up here, DB, HV, TJ. It's also on the new spreadsheet, which the new spreadsheet is available on Canvas. It's also linked at the end of the old spreadsheet. It's nothing new except that it's, new. And it's called like spring calendar or something. Oh no, because I'm already looking at spring. Whatever. Is anybody having trouble joining 4th period? Okay. Is anybody having trouble finding a computer? No. No. What are you working on, man? You have your Chromebook out? What do you expect to happen, man? Where do you see this going? Is anybody having trouble finding the new calendar spreadsheet? Okay, you can, I'll show you up here. You can go to the old spreadsheet, and at the bottom, it is linked spring calendar, I believe. That is the new one. There is also, it is also linked on Canvas. For the course, there is only one announcement. There will only ever be one announcement, probably. Computer Science B. And that announcement, oh wait, hold on. I should probably let you guys see announcements. What? Hold on a second. Yeah, it totally makes sense that you were not able to see it because I put it in the wrong place. No, this should totally be there. Announcements. All right. Oh, you know what I did? I put it in the first. That's not going to help. Assignments, announcements. Announcements. Okay, so let's yeah, so that totally makes sense why you were not able to get to it, because it wasn't there. Let's put it in announcements, and however you were accessing announcement or accessing the shared documents. And there you go. They're linked there. Save. All right. So everyone is able to get to the calendar spreadsheet. True, false? Lovely. All right. So there's nothing here yet, but that's important. And let's keep going with the stuff. All right, so lesson 2. Lesson 2, again, starts out with a video, but we can fly through this one. It's pretty short.
One of the benefits of lists is that their length can grow and shrink over the course of a program. But that means it can be useful to find the length of a list at a given point in time. You can get the length for a list like this: numlist.length. When your program runs, the computer will replace this with the current length of the list. In this case, the length of the list is 6. A potential point of confusion is that even though the length of the list is 6, the last index is 5. This is because we start the indexing at 0. Because lists change size, a common issue in programming with lists is, what's the index of the last element? We typically find out using the expression list.length -1, and you frequently see it used to access the last element of the list like this.
Okay. Numlist.length is just a number. It's how many items there are. Numlist.length -1 is just a number, but it's the address of the last item in the list. If there are 20 houses on a street and the first house is house 0, the last house is house 19. You just have to memorize that or understand that. Yeah.
Numlist, and in square brackets, numlist.length -1.
Okay, again, if you name the street and in square brackets, put the address of the house, all of this together refers to what's at that address, which is, in this case, 40. Again, a lot of new stuff.
Lists are a very powerful way to store and maintain data in programs. They open the door for us to write programs that use and process lots and lots of information, especially when we don't know ahead of time just how much information needs to be stored. Let's try them out.
All right, so the first, well, let's second bubble in this. This app that you get almost all of it at the beginning, and it works, is a very advanced app. There is a lot of stuff going on here. It's going to be overwhelming for 90% of you. That's fine. Okay, just try to stick with it. I always recommend F11, give yourself a few more pixels to work with. And as always, it's usually a good idea. You get to a new thing without even just hit run and see what happens. Okay, so this app is called Outfit Picker, and you kind of see how it works. You go left and right, and you pick out some combination. So how is this working? Well, there is a list. Well, let's just go through this. We'll do our best. Okay, so it starts out with creating an empty list. Okay, the first list is called tops list. The second is bottoms list. And here you can see it's starting out just, it names the variable and then open bracket, close bracket, open square bracket, call it bracket, open bracket, square bracket. The other ones would be open parentheses or open parent and open curly bracket for other options, like function definitions. You'll see in parentheses, but we'll just call it bracket or square bracket. We've done things like this before. You know, we always declare variables. We always put var at the top, except in very specific cases. All our vars go at the top. We've done things where we say var username gets, single equal sign gets an empty string. We're saying this variable is going to receive a string. We want it to have all the properties of a string. We just don't know what it is yet. And then later on in the app, we do a get text of the username or something like that. Here, we're saying create a variable, and I want it to be a list. I don't know what's in the list. I don't know how long the list is going to be, but it's going to be a list, and presumably we'll be adding things to it. Otherwise, what's the point? And so it does that for tops and bottoms. And then it creates another variable called tops index and bottoms index. And that is the variable that's going to either go up or down by 1 based on whether we click right or left. Okay, tops index goes up by 1 when you click on this button, goes down by 1 when you click on this button. Bottoms index goes up by 1 here. This one goes down by here. And that's what happens when you click on the buttons. And then in the update screen, it's using that number that's changing back and forth as the index to look for in the list. Now, how are we getting this list? Well, we're starting with an empty list, and we're running a function called fill lists at the very beginning, and it's the only time that it runs. Fill list, the function call is nowhere else in the app. It's just a setup function. It's not even an update function. It's just start. And the definition is it's saying append item to the list called tops list, and then append this image. Okay, we've done this before with images being image address, just URLs of an image, where if you went to this, well, let me just go open. If I just go here, stop it. Well, just trust me, it'll go to that image. So right at the beginning, it's creating, it's putting items in the list. It's putting, I don't know, 5 or 6 items in each list, which could have started with things in the list, but you can imagine how long that would get to have a list full of, stop it, full of, did I break this? Never mind. Those URLs. So this is just a way of organizing things at the very beginning. And then we have our 4 buttons. You'll notice that as you go to either side, you get to the last item in the list and it stops. Same thing the other way, goes to the last item in the list and it stops. Okay, same thing for the bottom, other way for the top. I am going to, and I want you to also, as we go along, I'm going to put a console.log statement at the very beginning of update screen, because I want it to console log tops index. And we're going to change this to bottoms index when we get to the bottoms one. But I want it to console log tops index every time we click on update screen or click on one of the buttons, or call update screen rather. And you can see down here, I click to the right, starts out at index 0, goes to index 1 because I clicked it once, 2, 3, 4, 5. I keep clicking and we're still at index 5. We go the other way, 3, 2, 1, and I keep clicking and we're still at index 0. Okay, because we are using these 2 conditionals, the top, where right now we're just talking about top left and or left top and right top. These 2 buttons are the 2 on the top. You can see left top button, right top button. There are conditionals at the beginning of each of these that are checking to see if there's room to go. Okay, top left button is checking to see if the index we're currently looking at is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, it will let you have the index go down by 1 and then update the screen with that. That's like saying you can only move to the left if there's somewhere to go to the left. If you're already at index 0, there's nowhere to go to the left, so it blocks this. This conditional isn't true. It does call update screen, which is why we're still getting new zeros at the bottom. But there's nowhere to go, so it's not letting you change it to the left. Same thing to the right. If the index is less than the last item on the list, no matter how many items there are in a list, is dot length -1. If you're less than that, it lets you go to the right. Otherwise, it blocks it with this conditional. Okay, and same thing bottom and bottom left, bottom right. I want to make it, and that is to say, you will make it so that you can keep going to the right. And as you click to the right, it goes back around and loops around. This sort of is a standard for user interface in a lot of different applications. It's also a common concept for any sort of visualization or game or something where something goes off the screen to the right and it comes back around on the left and vice versa. That's just checking, is the X position less than 0? If it is, set it to the farthest right position. And the same thing, if it's greater than the farthest right position, set it back to 0. That's how you would do left, right. And Y would be top, bottom, but that's okay. Here, we are just need to make the index, if it's greater than 0, we can take 1 off of it. Otherwise, we need to reset top's index to the last index, which the last index is tops list dot length -1, and you do have to type it out, I think. Oh yeah, you can't. There is a dot length thing. You do need to understand the difference between line 12 and line 14. Line 12, that -1, tops index -1, is completely unrelated to the tops list dot length -1. The first one is just saying tops index gets tops index -1, means tops index goes down by 1. You could also write tops index minus minus. Down by 1 is just minus minus, up by 1 is plus plus. It's a good shorthand, but they already have it set up like that. This is saying set the current or the index that we're looking at to the last item in the list. The last item in the list is always dot length -1. So this is our top left button. We should be able to go, even though we're locked out to the right, if we go to the left, we should go back around. We're at 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then it goes to 5. So if you do this correctly, you should be able to go all the way around and keep looping to the left. And those of you who are pattern seekers would be able to guess that we're going to do this to all 4 of them. I strongly recommend hitting reset before you start making large code changes so it doesn't break. It usually works itself out, but that's fine. And so top right button, top right, we're checking to see if there's somewhere to go to the right. Okay, if we are not at the last item in the list, we can go to the right. Otherwise, we need to set it to the first item. Tops index is going to get 0. Okay, if we go too far to the right, we want it to go back to 0. Okay, left bottom, and you can just set up a, like I'm showing you, click on the plus sign of the blue, which will give you an else statement. You don't need to check for something else if whatever is 0, if bottom's index is 0, do this, because it's the only other scenario is the one we're checking for. So you don't, it just is the else. So we're going bottom's left or left bottom. If there's room to go to the left, it will let it take 1 off. Otherwise, set it to the last one. Where bottom's index is going to get the last address, which is bottom's list dot length -1. Now we should be able to go left continually. This isn't changing because my console.log was only tops list. You don't need to change this one. I'm just showing you our bottom's index. Yeah, there we go. It goes all the way around. Now we just need to add bottom right, which will, if we go too far to the right, we need to set it back to 0. Remember, var is only at the top unless you are. Did I not do this? Oh, I probably undid. Var is only at the top var is always at the top unless you are creating sort of a temporary thing inside of a definition, which none of this is. So only var at the top. This is all reassigning variables. Bottom's index is going to get 0 for the right bottom. If we go all the way around, should set it back to 0 and should let you go all the way around. You can see my index watcher. Oh, wow. A lot of watchers here. And there you go. Okay, that again, I know that's a lot, but I am going to check to make sure that the assignment for this is to make sure that your app goes all the way, or your lists go all the way around. I'm going to check for it. If you don't do it, it's incomplete. So there's that. Okay, bubble 2. This is this the pick 2 name list? Oh no, this is just name generator. I'm sure you've seen things like this before, where I don't know, whatever you're into, there's a random name generator, and it's just picking a random name from this list and a random string from the first list and a random string for the second list and combining them. All right, so how is it working? Well, guys, settle down for a second. The first 2 lists, the adjective list and the noun list, it's an array starting with values in it, a list of strings. There's no adding items to this list. It's just referencing these provided items. And we're getting 2 other variables that are just going to be the index that we pull from. Okay, and we have an update screen function where the update screen is just going to combine those 2 variables into a string. The key is those variables are going to be grabbed from a random number, I suppose technically a random number generator. The key, though, do listen. The key is that the random number that gets pulled is a valid number, or rather, it is an index where something exists. If there are 20 houses on the street and you say random number 0 to 40, and it comes up with 25, it's going to be undefined. There's nothing at index 25 if there's only 20 houses on the street. There's nothing at index 20 if there's only 20 houses on the street, because the last address is 19 if there's 20 houses. Anyway, so how do we make sure that we pick an address where something exists? Well, we could say, well, we know how many items are on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I can't even go all the way over. Whatever, 8. There's 8 items in the first list. We could say, in adjective, I don't know why noun comes first. We could say random number between 0 and 7. And it would still work the same, because the last address on the adjectives list is address 7. And whatever random number came up between 0 and 7 would work. We'd be able to find the name that's on that list at that position. It would work. But what if we added something to that list, which you're about to do? It would never get to that position. What if we took something away from that list? It might pick a random number where nothing exists anymore. So that's why we always do a random range between 0 and whatever the last position is on that list. The last position is the name of the list dot length -1. It just is. Okay, and this is gathering, it's creating an index, or it's choosing a random number where something exists in each of those lists. And then it's getting what's at that position and combining them in a concatenation with \n inside of quotes, so that this variable, and these variables have var in here because they're only used in the update screen function. The other variables carry over. Okay, adjective index is used here, but then it's also used here, so it has to be a var up top. But these variables are only used here, and it's getting whatever is over there and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so what you need to do for this is to add an item to each of the two lists, which I strongly recommend switching to show text and going to the end. You'll see that items in a list are separated by commas. So you need to add a comma before you add something. And we're going to add another string. Make sure that it's inside of the bracket. It won't work otherwise. And inside of its own quotes. So we'll add an adjective. Tall is an adjective. And let's add one to nouns. How about persons? Okay, these are strings, so they need to be in quotes. And the items are separated by commas, and the entire thing is wrapped in a single square bracket at the beginning and end of the list. And this should work. Let's see if we get, there we go, tall puppies, forbidden persons. That's not a bad name. Tall persons, there we go. And that's that. Quick video.
You can also assign or update a particular index's value. You refer to the slot the same way. Names at index 0 gets the value Sarah would replace the current value at index 0, just like assigning a new value to a variable.
Okay. There's a lot of ways, well, 4 or 5 ways to change a list, to add items, remove items, insert items, and this is just reassigning. If you say, a single equal sign is gets, it's not equals. You could also say is or gets, whatever. The name of a list, in this case, names, and the index, its address, combined refers to whatever is in that slot. Giving it a new, get is changing what's in that slot. Now, he's about to go over the other options. If you've seen for real JavaScript before, the array methods are like push, pop, splice, slice, which all do different things, either change it or retrieve or add one or remove one. But here we go.
Once you have created a list, you can modify it by adding items, removing items, or inserting items. To add an item to a list, you can use the Append Item function. Let's add Kelly to the end of the list of names like this. Append Item names Kelly. Notice that Append Item is a function that accepts 2 parameters, the list name and the actual value that you want to add. Appending an item always adds the value to the end of the list. To remove an item, you use, wait for it, the Remove Item function. If we want to remove Josh from the list of names, we'd need to know the index where Josh is stored. So we could do this. Remove item names 1. When you remove items, the whole list shrinks and it closes the gap of the item that was removed. Now our list has 4 items indexed 0 through 3. Because the list shrank, items that come after the removal point are effectively re-indexed. So if we once knew that Kelly was stored at index 4, Kelly is now at index 3. This is not a problem, but something to be mindful of. We can also insert items into the middle of the list with insert item, like this. Insert item names to Brooke. The insert item function needs 3 parameters: the name of the list, the index you want the new item to appear at, and the value to insert. Inserting an item grows the size of the list. Similar to remove item, the items in the list that come after the insertion point will be re-indexed. Because indexes are just numbers, you can put anything in between the square brackets that evaluates to a number, like variables or even arithmetic expressions. For example, let's say we're keeping track of temperature readings in a location with a variable called loc. var loc gets 3. We can change the value in numList at index loc like this. numList at loc gets 1.
Okay, that's the same concept as using .length minus 1 as an index. Anything inside the brackets needs to be a number or something that refers to a number, like a variable or a .length minus 1. But it all works the same way. In fact, you'll probably be using .length minus 1 or some other variable as the index rather than a hard-coded number, just because lists change as you go. All right, so pair maker app. This is about, I don't know, 7 notches above where any of you are at this point. This is a very complex app. A lot is going on. We're going to try and break it down. If you don't understand everything that's going on, that's fine. But we're just trying to build on stuff and have you just sort of absorb some of the language that goes along with this. All right, so always we'll just run it. Okay, we see an add button. Let's add a person. And we've added one to the list. What else has happened? Well, cleared out the text input. That's super professional. We like that. We'll always do that. But you'll see that the dropdown has added that to an option. I think that's pretty cool. And now we have a dropdown with all of the updated options and a remove button. We can presume that they're related. Click remove. Okay, after choosing one, it removes it from our list. It removes it from our options. And that's pretty cool. Then we have assign a random pair. Let's click on that. It chose 2 people out of the list of people, wrote their names down here, and removed them from our list of options. Okay, you should be able to sort of see what's going on in the background, as clearly the text that's in this box is referring to the same set of information as the options in the dropdown, and how the other 2 things work. So let's try to break this down. Try to stick with me. Okay, we're starting out with an array. You need to, I got you. We're starting out with an array with 3 options in it. They all are strings. And the add person button is going to be adding things to that list. It's going to be a get text. So it automatically will be adding its items when we do add person. It adds your string to the list, even though you can't see it. Running in the background, it will add an item to that list and do everything with it that way. And it calls update screen at the beginning just to gather all the information. It also calls update screen after everything, which is the same way that we've done things in the past with update screen. So that shouldn't be too new. Yeah. There you go. Mhm. All right, so let's look at everything here is using this list in some way. The two main update screen things, anytime update screen, it's going to take whatever's in that list. Right? This is new. .join takes a list and combines everything in that list, putting whatever's in here in between. Because it put \n in the parameter here, it's writing out these texts with a new line. If we just put a space in there and ran it, it would not combine it with a new line. And that is super useful. The other thing that's happening every time is it's setting the options of the dropdown to whatever is in the list at that time. Every single one of the inputs, the text input, the dropdown, and the assign a random pair, call update screen at the end. So whatever the status of that list is at the end will determine what goes into this text area and what options are in this dropdown. If you recall, in design mode, you can go to the dropdown, and options is one of the parameters, but it can be blank because we're using, or they're using, the set property, set the options to the items in that list. Okay, the parameters of setting the options of the dropdown are name the design element, which is this dropdown, which property you want to change. Any set property, you have to choose which property, its location, its size. We've done all this. And what do you want the options to be? You want them to be the items in the list. Let's see what happens if we put a number in there. It does take it as that. What about a true false statement or a Boolean? It receives it as a string, and that's fine. Lists can hold different types of data, different types of information. You could have a list that has a string, a number, a Boolean. You can add strings, or excuse me, lists inside of lists, which are called two-dimensional arrays. You almost never would have more than one type of information. There's rarely a situation where you would have numbers and strings in the same list, unless you format it in a very specific way, like the even index, the even indices, the even locations were numbers, and the one after it was a string that referred to it. But that's, you'd probably just have two lists. Anyway, so our three interactions, well, let's just deal with the first two. The add and remove are the most similar. They actually are using a local variable. Okay, in this case, this one's creating a new variable called new person. This could work as a global variable and then just have it reassigned here, but because it's only used in this area, it's fine to make it local. Okay, it's creating a new variable of whatever text, get text, the user puts in the text input. So at this point, after I hit add, after you hit the button, this variable is going to get whatever's typed in here. And then it calls insert item. And we have insert item at into the list called people's list. It's our only list at position 0. And what do we want insert in there? What went into this variable? Now, technically, you could just put the get text into the parameter of what you want to put in there, and it should work the same. Yeah, it's still working the same. The only reason to create a new variable right before you use that variable, I mean, just simplification. I don't know if it's even that much simpler, but it works the same. And we're doing insert item at position 0. What if we wanted to put it at the end? What would we do? There's two ways to put it at the end. Anybody got an idea of how you would put the new thing at the end? Two ways. How do you put something at the end? Raise a hand. Anybody? Great, excellent. One is append item. Append item goes to the end. We could also insert item at the end. The problem is, okay, the last item is dot length -1. So it's people list dot length -1. But notice what happens when we insert something into dot length -1, it goes to the second to last. And that's because when I hit add, there are 3 items in the list. So the last item is position 0, and we're saying put it at, I mean, the last item is position 2. We're saying put it at position 2, when really we would say put it after the last position. So it would be people's length or people list dot length is the actual, is putting it one after the last position. But you would really just use append. So really just ignore everything I said for the last like 40 seconds. Okay, so that's our add situation. Nice and easy, everything gets added. Remove. Remove is getting the property of the dropdown. It's getting the index of the dropdown. So the options of a dropdown also have an index. The first item in the dropdown is index 0, and so on. So when we click remove, it's saying create a variable with whatever position this dropdown is in. It's not worried about what's in that position. It's just saying keep track of, okay, it's in the 3rd slot, which is index 2, or it's in the 6th slot, which is index 5. Once we get what position it is, it's saying remove the item at that position. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just keeping track of what spot in the options at that time. And because every one of these options refers to all of the options in the list at that time, it's going to be one of them. And then it says remove whatever is at that position on that list, and then update the screen again. Update the screen is set the list or set the text area and the dropdown. Okay, that is, I'd probably call that medium difficult or medium complex. The last function or event handler, but also function definition, the random assign. The random assign takes 2 names off of the list, removes them. Well, first it puts them into a temporary variable that it's going to use in a concatenation to put here. And then it removes them from the running list, whatever the current state of that list is, and updates the screen with whatever shorter list is at that time. But you'll notice that it's in an if-else statement. It's in a conditional, which is checking to see if there are at least two people. Greater than or equal to is at least. If there are at least two items in that list, people's list.length, then it will do the grab two and remove them and put their names down here. But if there are not two people in the list, it will add more people to make a pair. Okay, if I click again, it says add more people to make a pair. It doesn't take another one off. So our goal is to go through this and make it so that it changes, it pulls three people off the list. Now, obviously, that will remove all three if you don't add some at the beginning. But let's go through this and fix this completely so it will remove three. First, let's go into design mode and change the text to this. And how about a random trio? I don't know why there's an exclamation point there. I'm feeling sort of attacked, but that's fine. Now we need to essentially do all of this again, but anywhere it says random index 2, random person 2, index 2, whatever, clearly needs to be 3. It's going to be our third option. Don't worry about the fact that our list starts with index 0. We talked about this before, finding a random valid index in the list is taken care of, no matter how long the list is, with our random range of between 0 and the last item. But so we need to make sure that there are at least 3 people in the list. And we can just copy this. We'll put it down here. And we need to grab a third from the list. So we need a random, create a index between 0 and the last one available at that time, which after we run these two, the list is 2 shorter. It's 2 names shorter before this one even gets a chance to pick one. So this dot length -1 is actually a different number every time it's called. It's however many there are, or the last one, then one less than that, but it's still between the last one, 0 and the last one. But anyway, we're creating a new variable, random index 3, which will be a random number of available options. We're going to create a new random person, which is on that list at position random index 3. So var random person 3 will be one of the names on the list. Then we're going to remove the item at that position from the list, but we've stored that person's name in this temporary variable. Then we can get rid of it from the list. But we need to then take that name, which is being stored here in random person 3, and put it into our concatenation called, well, it's not even, we could put this in a temporary variable, but you don't really need to. It's just setting the label to a text of what we had before, random person 1 plus random person 2. So we need to add to the end. First, I would say let's change this to a comma, and commas don't need spaces before. And then again, I recommend going to text mode. And after random person 2, I'm going to do space plus space. These spaces don't do anything except make it clearer to understand. Let's do an and again, inside of quotes, space and space. Then after the quotes are random or temporary variable, random person 3. Which should look like that. And if we're going fast, this will be up in a video shortly, but that doesn't mean do it the last day of the semester, the last day of the quarter, once again. So it should end up looking like that. And let's see if this works. There we go. And our else situation still works. Let's try adding some people to it. And trio pulls 3. I want a comma here. I love being Oxford comma. And you should too. Okay, got a bunch of strings on there. And even though these are numbers, it uses get text up above. So it is actually a string. And we assign a random trio, picks 3 from our list, and displays them here, removes them, and removes them from the options. Assign a random trio, picks 3, pulls them from the list, writes them down here, updates these options. We hit it again. There's not enough people. Oh, I should change this to make a trio. I mean, that's not critical. I'm not going to check that, but just go ahead and do it. Okay. And we should probably change that to, no, I'm not getting too, I'm getting too pedantic with design elements. There you go. All right, so that's it for deliverables for lesson 2. The last 2 bubbles are just recaps of 2 things that we talked about. One is picking a random item from a list, no matter how long it is. Create a temporary variable, or in this case, it's a global variable, but yeah, because it's used different places. That is just a random number that is a valid address on our list, a valid index. Dot length -1 is the last item on the list. And using that variable, which will receive a number, that variable is used inside of the brackets. That number is used inside the brackets and will refer to a random, because the name of the street and the address refers to the house, what's at that address. Okay, in our scrolling situation, this is like the outfit picker. This doesn't have our super cool wraparound situation. It just has the check to see if the current index is greater than 0, it lets you go down by 1. Otherwise, it ignores it. And right button, if you are not yet to the last item on the list, if you're less than the last item on the list, it lets you go up by 1. Otherwise, it ignores it. And either way, it updates the screen. All right, and that is the end of lesson 1 and 2. The video will be up shortly. Let me know if you have any questions.